9 players carted off the field, 3 season-ending injuries, a running back forced to play quarterback, and one of the most ruthless defensive performances in NFL history.
You can see that they have splinted that leg, and he's not putting any weight on that at all. Joe Howard takes it right in the ear hole. Watch number 80. Here comes Hager from the right there. A scary moment.
This wasn't any old division rivalry game. This was the night the Philadelphia Eagles turned Veterans Stadium into a battlefield. They would play a game so brutal that it would forever be known as the bodybag game. The rivalry between these teams dates back farther than the 1990 NFL season. Throughout history, these teams had played each other over 100 times, and ask any Eagles or Washington fans, in the late 80s and early 90s, the rivalry burned hotter than ever. In the 80s, Washington, led by offensive-minded head coach Joe Gibbs, was a powerhouse team and already had 2 Super Bowl wins in the span of 6 years. The Eagles, on the other hand, had little to show for the decade. They did reach Super Bowl 15 in 1980, which they ended up losing to the Raiders. But the loss sent the team spiraling for most of the 80s, despite boasting talented rosters. In 1986, though, in came new head coach Buddy Ryan, a mastermind who transformed how teams approached defense. He was also an old drill sergeant, and safe to say, still quite fiery for his age.
There's Buddy Ryan, there's Kevin Gilbride. That's Buddy Ryan taking a swing at Kevin Gilbride.
He was infamous for letting his players do anything on the field. As the architect of the legendary '85 Bears defense, he created a unit that was absolutely brutal. A unit going down in NFL history as perhaps the most formidable defense ever assembled. Now, in Philadelphia, Ryan brought that same defensive intensity to a city with a special breed of fans. Fans that would embrace Ryan's attitude with open arms. Just 3 weeks before their Monday night showdown in 1990, Washington had dealt the Eagles a stinging 13-7 defeat, dropping Philadelphia to a 2-4 record. That loss stung, but it also sparked something in the Eagles. They responded by winning their next 2 games, building momentum as they prepared to welcome Washington to the Vet. Now, sitting just 1 game behind in the NFC East standings, the Eagles saw an opportunity for revenge and a chance to reshape the division race. And in the days leading up to the game, Buddy Ryan did what Buddy Ryan did best. He stirred the pot. The Eagles head coach had boldly claimed to the media that they'd beat Washington so bad, they'll have to be carted off in body bags. Now, that's a hell of a quote, even for back then. But this wasn't the first time Buddy Ryan had been controversial. During a Thanksgiving game just the year before, Dallas Cowboys coach Jimmy Johnson accused Ryan of having taken out a bounty on 2 Dallas players. Yeah, Ryan was ruthless. In his 4th year with the Eagles, Ryan had built his defense around future Hall of Famer Reggie White, arguably the most dominant defensive player in the game, leading a unit that perfectly matched their coach's aggressive philosophy. As the Monday night lights flickered on, football fans across America settled in for what promised to be a classic NFC East battle. They had no idea they were about to witness one of the most brutal games in NFL history.
The Liberty Bell here at Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. A capacity crowd on hand tonight for the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Redskins.
Washington had arrived with their own playoff aspirations, but facing uncertainty at quarterback. Their starter, Mark Rippon, already sat on the sidelines with an injury, forcing them to rely on backup Jeff Rutledge. As the lights blazed across Veterans Stadium, William Frizzell delivered the first blow in what would become an avalanche of Eagles' defensive dominance. Reading Jeff Rutledge's eyes perfectly, Frizzell jumped the route.
And it's intercepted. Frizzell inside the 20, the 10, touchdown.
Philadelphia's defense had drawn first blood, setting the tone for the violence to come. The Eagles, feeding off their home crowd's energy, played with a particularly aggressive edge that teetered on the brink of reckless. Washington showed resistance early, refusing to let the game spiral away. Rutledge, despite struggling to find any rhythm in the hostile environment, managed to engineer a scoring drive. He connected with tight end Don Warren for a touchdown, knotting the game at 7-7. For a brief moment, it appeared Rutledge and the Redskins might weather the storm. The moment didn't last long. After a halfback pass from fullback Keith Byers to Sherman to put the Eagles up 14-7, their defense was on the field again, and this hit from Wes Hopkins ended Rutledge's night. But the play carried consequences beyond the score. Rutledge suffered a broken thumb, the first major casualty of the night. So Washington turned to Stan Humphries, the team's 3rd-string quarterback. The Eagles' defense, already playing with a frightening intensity, seemed to dial up the pressure even further. Humphries managed just 6 completions on 11 attempts before his night ended. The injuries mounted at an alarming rate.
Boy, he took a shot right in the back when he was up in the air from Alvin Walton.
Bouncing at the 15 and fielded at the 8, and Edwards gets buried.
The kind of hitting we're seeing tonight is sort of self-generating. We saw it from the very moment, and it's just continued to build and build and build.
Well, you better hit to survive.
That is the way you do survive in this game.
If you choose not to participate in this one from a hitting standpoint, you'll get knocked out of the game.
Running back Gerald Riggs limped off with a sprained foot. Walter Stanley, the kick returner, joined him with a sprained knee. But the reality of the situation set in when wide receiver Joe Howard absorbed such a devastating hit that he had to be carried off on a stretcher.
Joe Howard takes it right in the ear hole. Watch number 80. Here comes Hager from the right there. The top of his helmet right on the side of Joe Howard's helmet.
That was the moment Frizzell turned toward the Washington bench and delivered the taunt that would name the game. Hey, you need any more body bags? Meanwhile, the Eagles' offense continued to capitalize on their defense's dominance. Randall Cunningham, operating with the comfort of a commanding lead, found Heath Sherman for another touchdown. The scoreboard now reflected the physical beating taking place on the field. The situation turned surreal when Washington, out of quarterbacks, turned to rookie running back Brian Mitchell. A college quarterback at Southwest Louisiana, Mitchell now found himself thrust back behind center in the most hostile of circumstances. Washington had run out of options. The sight of Mitchell strapping on his helmet and jogging onto the field as a quarterback captured the desperation of the moment. Just hours earlier, he had been preparing for his usual duties as a kick returner and running back. Now, with the Veterans Stadium crowd at a fever pitch and the Eagles' defense circling like sharks, Mitchell found himself living every backup's nightmare: the emergency quarterback. A position players joke about at practice but never expect to actually play had become reality. The Eagles' defenders, already feeding off the energy of their home crowd, seemed to grow even more predatory at the sight of Mitchell behind center. But Mitchell, surprisingly, led the team right down the field. He completed 3 of 6 passes for 40 yards and even managed to score Washington's final touchdown on a 1-yard run. This just happened to be his first NFL touchdown. The Eagles' defense feasted throughout the night. They recorded 3 sacks, forced 3 turnovers, and scored 2 defensive touchdowns. Even Reggie White got in on the action, snaring his first interception of his storied career. The defensive performance proved so dominant that the game's outcome felt decided long before Mitchell's late consolation score. By the final whistle, the score of 28-14 almost seemed secondary to the physical toll extracted over 60 minutes of brutal football. The game perfectly encapsulated Buddy Ryan's defensive philosophy, not merely to stop the opponent, but to inflict such physical domination that they'd think twice about coming back. On this Monday night in Philadelphia, his Eagles had done exactly that, delivering one of the most punishing performances in NFL history. The final casualty report read like a war dispatch. Quarterback Jeff Rutledge with a broken thumb, Stan Humphries nursing a sprained knee, Gerald Riggs hobbled by a sprained foot, Walter Stanley's knee sprain, Joe Howard's concussion, and Greg Minuski's knee injury. 2 Eagles players and 9 Washington players had been forced out of the game. 3 had to be carted off and 1 had to leave on a stretcher. The Eagles had turned Veterans Stadium into a gladiatorial arena, with their defense playing the role of the Lions. Philadelphia's players celebrated their 28-14 victory, but the repercussions of that Monday night reached far beyond the scoreboard. The NFL, faced with the spectacle of a team forced to play a running back at quarterback on national television, took immediate action. For the 1991 season, the league instituted the third quarterback rule, allowing teams to dress a third quarterback without counting against the game day roster. Yeah, the body bag game literally changed the rules of professional football. It also sparked a remarkable turnaround for both teams. The Eagles, energized by their dominant defensive play, won 5 of their final 7 games. Randall Cunningham led them to a 10-6 record and the 4th seed in the loaded NFC playoff picture. Washington matched that surge, also finishing 10-6, setting up an inevitable postseason collision course. Fate delivered poetic justice less than 2 months later. Washington returned to Veterans Stadium for a wild-card playoff game, this time with a healthy roster and revenge in their hearts.
Well, it was body bags for the Redskins the last time, and who knows, maybe it'll be a pine box for Buddy after this one.
In a stunning reversal, they silenced the Philadelphia crowd with a commanding 20-6 victory. The Hunters had become the hunted. Brian Mitchell, the emergency quarterback that night, would not be needed as an emergency QB again, but he would throw one more pass in his career as a member of the Philadelphia Eagles of all teams. The body bag game's ripple effects also extended well beyond the 1990 season. Joe Gibbs and his Washington staff pointed to that brutal November night as the foundation for their 1991 Super Bowl campaign. The humiliation and physical beating they endured sparked a transformation. For Buddy Ryan, the game's legacy proved more complicated. His defensive genius had built one of the most intimidating units in NFL history, but the controversy surrounding the body bag game, particularly his pregame body bags taunt, contributed to his firing after the Eagles lost to Washington in the playoffs. Even so, 3 decades later, the game's nickname still sends shivers through NFL circles. It represents both the peak of defensive intimidation and a reminder of football's violent nature. The Eagles' defensive performance that night ranks among the most dominant and destructive in league history, the kind of game that helped build the NFL's reputation for toughness while pushing the league toward a more protected style of play. Some games change careers. Some games change rules. Some games change entire franchises. The body bag game did all three. From the ashes of that brutal night, Washington found the spark that would lead them to a Super Bowl victory the following year. The NFL created the third quarterback rule to ensure no team would face such desperate circumstances again, and Veterans Stadium added another chapter to its notorious legacy. November 12th, 1990 is the ultimate testament to Buddy Ryan's defensive philosophy. On any given Monday night, a football game could become a battlefield.